Let's welcome in our roundtable on this Thursday. Joining us, Liz Peek, columnist at the Fiscal Times. Also with us, Republican strategist Ford O'Connell. Thank you both for joining us on this Thursday, just ahead of the debate. Liz, can Donald Trump be stopped? And if so, who do you think can stop him?
Well, you know, as you're reading those things, what occurs to me, and I think occurs to most people watching this, is, of course, that just fuels the fire. Having so-called establishment voices raised in unison to contradict and confront Donald Trump just makes his followers see red, and they're even more eager to go out and vote for him. Can he be stopped at this point? Yes, but you really need to see some people get out of the race, and with all due respect to the people in Massachusetts, Kasich is clearly got to be out of the race. Ted Cruz probably has to bomb in Texas, which isn't impossible. Polling shows him not doing terribly well there. If he gets trounced or trumped in Texas, then you maybe have a case that Marco Rubio could pick up a few important states, and then in March 15 voting, get Florida and Ohio and some other big states behind him. But it's a really narrow window now. The momentum is clearly with Trump. He's up in Florida. He's up in Texas. There's some dispute about that. But look, the window's closing, and it's got to happen pretty darn soon.
Yeah, I have to agree with you. Ford, I was talking with one of our camera guys, Steve, about this, and I said it kind of reminded me of like a chess game, if you will. You know, everyone's trying to get to Trump, and you've got these pawns in front of you. So if you're playing chess, you're a political strategist, what would be your next move to take out Trump?
Well, here's the deal. I do agree with Liz. I don't think that Trump's inevitable. I think he's on a strong glide path for the nomination. But the problem is to beat Trump, too many things have to occur over the next 14 days. And the biggest thing that actually has to occur is you have to have a two-man race. And I think the person who would be best to take out Trump would be Marco Rubio. But I do agree, John Kasich has to drop out. Ted Cruz has to bomb on Super Tuesday. So until that occurs, all this discussion is pretty much mute, and Trump's going to basically skate to the nomination with a plurality of votes.
So if I'm hearing both of you correctly, and are you hearing this, John? It sounds like you both are kind of saying it's Rubio. Rubio's the ticket.
Well, here's
there.
the problem with that theory, and as much as I respect you, Liz and Ford as well, I think that Ted Cruz and John Kasich have to stay in the race at least until the Ohio primary and the Florida primary on March 15th. Cruz has to win Florida so Trump doesn't get all of those delegates in Texas, and John Kasich somehow has to pull out a win in Ohio, again, so Donald Trump doesn't get those delegates. The problem is Marco Rubio has not been strong enough to be the alternative to Donald Trump, and he has to convince voters over these next 2 weeks that he can actually beat Donald Trump, and tonight's going to be a big task for him to do that. If he doesn't do it, then it's all kind of a moot point. But I think Marco Rubio needs Kasich and Ted Cruz to stay in so Cruz can win Texas and Ohio, and Kasich can win Ohio. Otherwise, Rubio doesn't really have any shot at all.
Well, I mean, the view is that Rubio can attract the moderate voters that Kasich would presumably otherwise have. And, you know, I think it just comes down to a numbers game. And I think you're right. It's not easy. It's hard to imagine that Ted Cruz is going to lead the campaign at any point. But in terms of people who have consistently polled well against Hillary Clinton, and it would be nice if we all kind of focused on the fact we're trying to keep Hillary Clinton out of the White House, which I think is an unbelievably important task, since she will just continue the very poor policies of Obama over the last 7 years. If we want to beat Hillary Clinton, I think that Marco Rubio has consistently shown an ability to do that. Tonight is really important. He's going to go after Cruz. I don't think anyone's going to go after Trump, which is, again, this kind of weird dynamic that's going on. It could be pretty ugly.
They got to lay off, you know, I only see, if people really want to stop Donald Trump, the only hope is if all of them just attack Donald Trump and don't leave any air for any other kind of conversation. If Cruz starts going after Rubio and vice versa, it's over.
Yeah, but nobody seems to be doing that.
I absolutely agree with you, John, on that point. I think you're absolutely right. The problem is Cruz and Rubio are not going to put their squabbling rivalry aside. They have to focus their collective firepower on Trump, and they have to basically undergird his simple message, which is, I am the man who's going to make America great again. If you can undergird Trump's message, that's how you beat him. You don't beat him with conservative credentials, and you don't beat him with ideology.
Nope. Every single thing that's surfaced has been something you've already heard about Donald Trump, including what Karl Rove said about him not having this lock on the nomination. Nobody wants to hear that from Karl Rove.
But it all seems like they're terrified. I mean, you have Rubio
They are
and Cruz
terrified.
going after each other. You're going after the second, or they're neck and neck. They've been second or third, but no one seems willing to go after Trump at all.
Well,
and he's the #1 guy right now.
Here's one of the reasons why. Every time Trump goes after one of his rivals, he is incredibly good at it. I mean, he basically reduced Jeb Bush to a sort of quivering mass in about 3 sentences. And he's already taken swipes at Rubio, and now he's talking about Cruz being a pathological liar. And guess what? That's having an impact on the poll.
No,
It's a really ugly race in every possible respect. But I got to tell you, I think every time that people say, hey, we got to block Trump, people kind of go, well, wait a minute. That's just exactly what we're so angry about, is this sort of controlling force from the so-called establishment. We're not buying it. And they just get adamant.
That's why it needs to come from the candidates. We'll talk more about that in a second.
Ford, stick around. There's still much more to come here on Newsmax Now. Coming up, we'll discuss why Florida Senator Marco Rubio may be vulnerable to attacks about his personal finances. Stay with us. Welcome back to Newsmax Now. Donald Trump and the rest of the Republican candidates will take the stage tonight for the final GOP debate before Super Tuesday, where a dozen states will hold their primaries. The situation for Senators Marco Rubio and Ted Cruz, well, it's pretty dire. So far, neither candidate has shown any willingness to take on Trump face-to-face during a debate, but that could change tonight. Rubio recently claimed most Republicans do not want Trump as a nominee. He suggested to NBC that Trump's only winning because the other candidates are splitting the majority of the votes. One anti-Trump GOP operative says Cruz and Rubio will need to tag team him tonight if they want to slow his momentum. Then there's Ohio Governor John Kasich and Dr. Ben Carson. At this point, both candidates are polling in the single digits. Many expect one, if not both, to drop out after the SEC primary March 1st. With much of the GOP establishment uniting around Marco Rubio, some argue there's really not any room left for Kasich. His campaign hoped for more support, of course, after Jeb Bush left the race following his big loss in South Carolina.
All right, let's welcome back in our panel. Rejoining us, Liz Peek, columnist at the Fiscal Times, also with us, Republican strategist Ford O'Connell. Thanks for coming back. Guys, let's talk about Marco Rubio. Would either of you be excited about Marco Rubio as a GOP nominee?
Well, I'll go first. I like Marco Rubio. I think mainly for this reason. I think we've had a president for 7 years who is not excited about the United States of America. And even though Rubio has given this pitch time and time again, I do believe that people who are recent immigrants, people like Marco Rubio, whose parents came to the United States to seek a better life, really have an extraordinary understanding of what is great about the U.S. And I think he's very good at telling that story. Obviously, the warts are that he's young, he's inexperienced, he hasn't had executive experience, he's like Obama in that. And, there are some corollary issues, such as the way he's managed his personal finances. We all know the stories about that. Too much debt.
Yeah, Dick Morris actually has an article on that on Breitbart. Morris says, quote, his abuse of his Republican Party credit card, his sweetheart home equity loan from a corrupt banker who went to jail, and his co-ownership of a foreclosed property with a former congressman who was forced out of office will all be key issues against him. Now, Ford, I thought Marco Rubio was the same guy who had too many warts, to borrow a phrase from Liz, to be Mitt Romney's VP.
Look, I'm going to be neutral, and it would be morally presumptuous for me to tell you who I would pick because I actually have a vote in the state of Florida. Let me say the following point. I look at this about who gives the Republican Party the best chance in November, and I see two candidates that give them a good chance. The best chance is Marco Rubio, and the second best chance, in my opinion, is Donald Trump. So you can just derive anything from there.
But Ford, is he the best qualified? As Liz just mentioned, I can't help but I've noticed all these interviews of people.
Apparently qualifications don't matter.
Let me tell you the best qualified presidential candidate is some chief of staff who nobody knows about on Capitol Hill because they actually know how the system works and they know how to fix the system. I'm not sure anybody's actually qualified to run for president who's never seen the inside of a system.
I think if qualifications mattered to voters this election cycle, John Kasich and Jeb Bush would be actually relevant in the discussion. Well, Kasich probably still is, but you can't have a better resume than John Kasich for a potential president.
I would disagree with you. I think the best resume out there is Hillary Clinton. On the other hand, I think she'd be a terrible president. So it's not really all about resume.
All right, well,
No, it's not.
That's not the conversation.
Qualifications and resumes sometimes aren't the same thing either.
Yeah.
That's true.
Public policy polling apparently gave in to some internet pressure. Maybe you heard about this on Twitter. It confirmed that the last question on their latest poll is whether you believe Ted Cruz might, in fact, this just in, be the Zodiac killer. Public policy polling has given into pressure before, famously including D's Nuts as a candidate in a North Carolina poll. No results yet, but Ford, do you think this line of poll questioning can damage a candidate's reputation?
Well, of course it can. Understand something about public policy polling. It's a Democratic firm. Notice they don't ask stupid questions when it comes to Democratic candidates. They create some sort of perception that somehow undermines a candidate for nothing he or she did. Remember the thing in politics. It's all perception. Reality and facts go out the window, particularly right now when you have a contested Republican nomination. Emotions get the better of everyone, and anyone who can throw anything in to make someone look bad, trust me, they'll do it.
Liz, so you're saying, what do you think? Is he the Zodiac killer?
I don't even know what. No, I mean,
No.
this is a ridiculous thing. Can you lie with polling? Of course you can. You can go after a certain result, and usually you can get the result that you're after. But look, I think these candidates are doing themselves and each other enough harm. The pollsters don't have to add on.
It is going to be ugly tonight for sure. Maybe eclipsing any of the ugliness we've seen thus far. But it's been a nice conversation with both of you guys before the big event tonight.
Always good to be here.
We appreciate it, Ford. Liz, thanks so much for being with us.
All
right, still more to come here on Newsmax Now. The Democrats will hold their primary in South Carolina this weekend. Both Hillary Clinton and Bernie Sanders are making their last-minute pitches to voters, trying to garner more of that African-American vote. Plus, we want to hear from you. What do you think about Donald Trump saying he loves poorly educated people? That was a soundbite for the ages. We've heard from some of you already. We'll get to more of those comments coming up. You can leave a message on our Facebook page, facebook.com/NewsmaxNow, or tweet us at NewsmaxNow. You can also send us an email at newsmaxnow.com/comments. Don't forget, we got live post-debate coverage tonight with special guest Mike Huckabee, who's almost endorsing Donald Trump, not quite. We'll ask him about that tonight. Stay tuned.